All right, this question comes from David. He says, at the tight end spot, who will play the most, Anthony Fasano or Julius Thomas? Now, this is a great question. I feel like on this channel, we really haven't even talked about the tight end position that much and how much it's improved from year to year, or excuse me, from last year to this year. Obviously, tight end was probably the biggest hole on the offense last year because it really did not have that much talent on it. Jordan Cameron was by far the most talented, and he was a huge disappointment for us. I mean, he was coming from Cleveland. He made the Pro Bowl, I think a season before he came to the Miami Dolphins, and he was a great player. I mean, he put the ball in the paint. He was one of the best tight ends in the game. People, I'm not even joking at the time, were comparing him to Rob Gronkowski. I mean, he was doing the touchdown sign left and right. So we thought Tannehill was finally going to get his number one tight end. Charles Clay was that, but he can never stay healthy. And same thing with Jordan Cameron. He just injuries really derailed his career. So now that hopefully Julius Thomas has had the same problems throughout his career, injuries really have derailed his career and his reputation. Fall into that same trap, hopefully not. But so let's talk about the additions what we've made. We really improved one of the weakest spots on the roster, and not only that, but Adam Gase's offense is so tight end heavy reliant. I mean, obviously the history with tight ends with Adam Gase. When Julius Thomas was his tight end, back-to-back double-digit touchdown seasons. He goes to Chicago. He takes Zach Miller, who took a year off of football, under his wing and makes him a Pro Bowl caliber tight end. So Adam Gase has a long history with tight ends because his offense is so tight end friendly. So it's a big part of the offense. Now that we have Julius Thomas, we made the trade with Brandon Albert that I was kind of critical of because of Julius Thomas's injury history. I'm backing off of that now because if tight ends are, like I said, tight ends are so important to this offense. And I think if Julius Thomas can stay healthy, then he's one of the best tight ends in the league. And then obviously look at the move we made with Anthony Fasano. All Focus's number one run blocking tight end in the NFL was Anthony Fasano. He's the best. Or one of the best run blocking tight ends in the league. We obviously lost one of the best run blocking tight ends in the league in Deion Sims. He goes to Chicago, but Anthony Fasano is a great run blocker. Anthony Fasano, to describe him, if you've been a Dolphins fan for a long time, you know Anthony Fasano. Anthony Fasano is a really good tight end. He's probably the last traditional tight end in the league that's really good at being a traditional tight end. So what does Anthony Fasano bring to the table? So like I said before, he's probably the best run blocking tight end in the league. We saw that with the Tennessee Titans. Really run heavy offense. He really showed off what he could do in that area. So he's always going to be on the football field. So there's always a threat of Anthony Fasano destroying your defense, whether it be up the seam in the middle of the football field or a deep crossing route. So there's always a threat that Anthony Fasano is going to go for your jugular. Not only that, but he's a smart, savvy tight end. He's really good route runner. He's got great hands, and like I said, he's just a smart, savvy tight end. He finds those open holes in zones. If you need a third and short, he's gonna get it for you. He's like a Wes Welker of tight ends. He's a great player. Like I said, he's really good at being a traditional tight end. So that's kind of the playing style you're gonna get with Anthony Fasano. He's really going to help this offense on play actions so much and in the red zone. So let's move on to Julius Thomas. But when Julius Thomas, we've heard this 1,000 times. When Julius Thomas was with Adam Gase, he was a double-digit touchdown guy. What he's gonna do for our offense is he's really gonna give Tannehill the first tight end Tannehill's ever had that he's really gonna have that seam route with. Julius Thomas is a big body. He's great at running that seam route, like that Rob Gronkowski style of seam route. He's really gonna help us in the red zones. We really have struggled in the red zone forever now, and he's really going to improve our numbers in the red zone. He's going to give Tannehill a legitimate red zone threat target that does that at a high level, and he's really going to open up the middle of the field. That's going to help Jay Ajayi. That's going to help Jarvis Landry. So both additions are really going to help this offense with misdirection plays and in the red zone. And they should. But it's going to be one heck of a tandem, and I can't wait to watch both of these guys go to work. Anthony Fasano is just way more versatile than Julius Thomas. He's going to be out there a whole lot more in run blocking downs. Not saying that Julius Thomas can't do that, because he's definitely had success in this offense doing that. But Anthony Fasano definitely, I think, is going to take more snaps because he's going to be out there on just a variety of different formations. This question comes from JJ the Boss 14. He says, do you think TJ McDonald would elevate our defense to a top 10, or do you think our defense is already a top 10? Let's answer that question first. Let's answer the question, do I think our defense is already a top 10? Statistically, our defense last year was the worst offense defense in franchise history. And not a lot of people know that. And it's kind of weird, but our defense was really bad. And the reason for that is there's a lot of people out there like Donald Butler, Spencer Paysinger, people who were starting on the football team that had no business starting on it, Jason Jones. I mean, there were people out there that we just picked up out of the parking lot to play football. And it was pretty bad. And that's a huge reason why there's just a bunch of stopgap players on there. We didn't have a lot of depth. Our sub packages were weak because of that, because we didn't have a lot of depth. We didn't have a lot of versatility on the defense last year, and that really hurt us. I mean, it really, really did. And this last draft, we really did a great job of improving that, getting Devon Godchalks, if that's how you say his name. I can never say his name. Getting Vincent Taylor, both really going to add defensive depth to that defensive line, right? Going out and getting William Hayes, Charles Harris. Guys that are really going to help our sub packages out, make us more versatile. One of the biggest things last year was Cameron Wake wasn't taking more snaps. Okay, that's a dumb idea because Jason Jones is replacing him, and we're losing a lot when Jason Jones is on the field. And that's really going to hurt Cameron Wake's numbers because we need him fresh for the fourth quarter. So we did a really, really, really good job of improving the versatility on this defense, improving the depth, improving the sub package, our sub package versatility, and really being creative with some of our sub packages, and I think Matt Burke is really going to do that. Our defensive depth obviously improved the linebacker core with the additions of Lawrence Timmons and Raekwon McMillan, but will we jump all the way to a top 10 defense? Is it possible? Absolutely. We have the talent to do it. We really do. Even when TJ McDonald comes back, our defense is just that much more improved. Adds in more depth and more versatility when he comes back because Nate Allen he can be a starter in this league. And he's had a really, really good offseason so far. So it is saying a lot to jump from statistically the worst Dolphins defense of all time to making that leap to a top 10 elite defense in the NFL. We definitely have the talent to do it, but before I say anything, I need to see this defense play together, and hopefully they all stay healthy. So can TJ McDonald elevate us to that top 10 status? He definitely can, and some of the things that he brings to the table is, one of the more underrated aspects of being a safety is are you versatile? Can you play in the box? Can you be that extra linebacker, so to speak, to help us stop the run? Okay, so if you can do that, if you can be the physical guy, if you can be the tone setter, and free roam, be a free safety, can I let you go back there and be our outfielder, be line to sideline and play free safety? Can you read a quarterback's eyes? Are you smart enough to do that? Things like that. Can you cover? Can you cover ground at a good rate? Can you be elite at both of those things? There's not a lot of people in the NFL that can do both. Because most of the time, free safeties not as physical built, not as big built, and can't take the physical punishment that it takes to be a strong safety, to be a box safety. Some people just can't do that, and they're basically one-minded, not versatile. They can't do both. TJ McDonald can do both. He is a big dude. TJ McDonald is a big dude. He's a physical safety. He's a tone setter. He's going to help us stop the run. It's underrated how much he's going to help us stop the run when he comes down in the box. Guess what? That allows Rashad Jones not to be down there in the box anymore. He can go play free safety and be our ball hawk, which is amazing. So that frees up Rashad Jones to do different things. And it just really improves the defense. And I cannot understate enough, guys, how much he's going to improve our run defense. He's going to really, really help us in that area. He's a big physical safety, and he is definitely a tone setter. And he's a great leader. He's a smart guy. He can play free and strong, and he's really going to help us out. And yes, he definitely adds versatility to the defense. He leaves up Rashad. He can play free. Rashad can drop back down into the box and be a ball hawk down there as well. So he adds so much to this defense, and definitely could elevate us to a top 10 defense for sure. This question comes from this is Patrick. He says, last year Vance Joseph had a terrible defense, so why should we expect more from Matt Burke? So if we let's go back a year ago, before the offseason started for Vance Joseph. Let's look at the personnel, right? Olivier Vernon leaves for the New York Giants, which was a terrible debacle of stupidity from the front office of the Miami Dolphins. We were going through a coaching transition. I think that had some things to do with it. We didn't want to pay him as much money as the Giants were going to pay him, and then we ended up paying Andre Branch more than we would have paid Olivier Vernon. So it was we just really messed up that situation. We should have brought Olivier Vernon back, because what happened when Olivier Vernon left is we had a spot that we had to fill. If you guys, obviously Andre Branch was coming off the bench for most of the year last year, and then he really started to catch fire. And we tried to replace Olivier Vernon with Mario Williams, and obviously that went terrible. Thank Jesus that Andre Branch came in and did a really good job and did a whole lot more than we expected him to do. And had a breakout season, because if he didn't, our defense would have even been worse. Our defensive line could not stop the run, and it would have even been worse if Andre Branch didn't show up. But we did a terrible job of replacing what OV brought to the table. We didn't replace it with any depth. We didn't improve the depth on the defensive line. Our front office really dropped the ball on that one. I mean, we added Mario Williams. That was an absolute terrible decision. We added Jason Jones to take some of the snaps off of Cameron Wake, and when he was on the field, it just made our defense even that much worse. And then when Cameron Wake came back and played full time, it made a huge difference, and that's why Cameron Wake is Cameron Wake. At one point last year, going into the 2016 NFL season, we did a terrible job of really improving the depth on the defense, adding young talent instead of adding players that were so far out of their prime. It's not even funny. I remember one of the reasons why we signed Jason Jones was because he was a former teammate of Ndamukong. It's like, what does that mean? Jason Jones just can't play anymore. Same thing with Mario Williams. And then obviously the linebacker situation. The starting linebacker unit would have been pretty. It would have been okay. It would have been good. But they all got injured, and the depth behind them was just absolutely atrocious. We had Donald Butler, and Spencer Paysinger in there. That was a huge problem for our defense. Same thing with the safeties. We really lost a lot in the safeties. We signed people off the street, and during when the season was starting, Bakari Rambo and people like that. Issa Abdul Quddus goes down. So we just did a bad job. And the difference between last year and this year, Hayes is such a big addition to the squad. Then you look at, obviously we go out and get Charles Harris, who's going to take snaps off of whoever he has to take snaps off, Andre Branch, Cameron Wake. That's going to really, instead of Jason Jones coming in for Cameron Wake, it's now going to be Charles Harris. Well, that is like a night and day difference. And then we have William Hayes, who's going to come in and really help us stop the run. Same thing with the Jason Jones effect. I think he's going to replace Andre Branch more than he's going to replace Cameron Wake, because Andre Branch is not the greatest against the run. So we just added way more versatility and depth to this defensive line. So it's a night and day difference personnel wise, right? We get TJ McDonald in free agency, and we get Nate Allen in a not a trade, but obviously the Raiders didn't match his tender. So Nate Allen can start in this league. He's had a great offseason so far, and TJ McDonald. So that adds depth to the back end. And then you look at our secondary. And then you look at the corner spots. Vance Joseph really dealt with a really young unit last year who also dealt with injuries. All of those guys are going to be way better this upcoming season. So the personnel on the defense from the talent from last year to this year is night and day. Obviously, I didn't even mention the additions of Lawrence Timmons and Raekwon McMillan. That's a night and day difference, talent-wise. And the guys behind them are better. Depth behind the linebacker position is better. So this defense overall is just way more talented than it was last year. And granted, the Dolphins' defense, it wasn't the starters, it was just the injuries, and we couldn't overcome the injuries because of how bad our depth was on the defensive side of the football. We just really improved the depth this year around, and I think that's why I expect Matt Burke's defense to be better than Vance Joseph's defense. And not to mention, Matt Burke, I think, is a very smart defensive coordinator, very cerebral, and I think he's definitely going to be fine when it comes to adjusting and calling plays. This question comes from Legend. He says, Koomisi still isn't medically cleared to practice. How do you feel about that? Do you think the Dolphins missed on cutting him and picking up Zach Brown or Harris? Or do you think Raekwon McMillan will do the job if Koomisi doesn't get cleared? So to answer your question, how do I feel about the Koomisi situation? It's unfortunate. Koomisi has talent. He was at one point a top 12 Pro Football Focus linebacker. He was a top 5 Pro Football Focus linebacker when he was a free agent. He was one of the top 5 free agents of that year. So Koomisi has a lot of talent. He's a great pass rusher. I've always thought he was a great pass rusher. I've never thought he was a middle linebacker. That was one of the biggest mistakes we've ever made. That was asking way too much of a player, and obviously he hurts his spine, and he has to have that fusion surgery, spinal fusion surgery, or whatever it was. Very serious injury, life-threatening injury if you play with it. So obviously it's up to Koa if he wants to keep playing, but it's tough because he is so talented, and it sucks. I think we do lose a really, really good player, definitely above average player if he can't play. So that's how I feel about the whole situation. Did we miss up picking up Zach Brown, or I think you're talking about David Harris? The Zach Brown situation, I'm not going to even focus on David Harris. I think he's far from what he used to be. But Zach Brown is, I think. Did we miss out on him? In hindsight, no, because of what we did in the draft. But Zach Brown is a really talented linebacker. He is a really, really talented linebacker. He can blitz, he can cover. He's a physical guy, and when I say this man can blitz, he'll be a 3-4 edge rusher because he really has talent blitzing on a defense, and he did a lot of that under Rex Ryan. Obviously, Rex Ryan he's a very blitz heavy defensive mind, and Zach Brown fit right into that, and he's a great coverage linebacker, like I said. And on Zach Brown, it would have been nice to have him on the team. Obviously, he came in for a couple of visits. He just wanted too much money. That was the whole thing. We wanted too much money. So did we miss on him? No, I don't think we missed on him, now that the co-MEC is. And so do I think Raekwon McMillan could step in? I think Raekwon McMillan would have started over Koa anyway. I think so far what we've heard about Raekwon so far in this offseason, how he's proved the question marks wrong, and he's answered them in terms of his athletic ability. Can he cover? Can he be a 3-down player? I think Raekwon so far, by far, had his whatever job he's going to get, he had that under lock. So yeah, I think Raekwon's going to step in right away and be that guy for us for sure. But it sucks with Koa. The Zach Brown thing, it would have been a whole lot worse if we didn't get a linebacker in the draft, especially somebody of Raekwon McMillan's caliber. And he's been just an absolute steal so far, and I can't wait to see him on a football field. So yeah, the co-MEC thing though, it sucks bad. This question comes from All-Star Gabe. He says, do you think Isaiah Ford will even make the depth charts? It's not looking good for him so far. Obviously, there was a little bit of hype surrounding him. Not hype, but there was definitely optimism surrounding him because he was a steal. He was projected to be a 5th-round pick, falls all the way to the 7th round, and there was great value there. And so far, he hasn't really shined. He hasn't really stood out. I mean, the undrafted free agent Drew Morgan out of Arkansas, he stood out more than Isaiah Ford has. So it's not looking good for him so far, especially since he has this huge, ginormous hill to climb when it comes to the Dolphins wide receiver core because it's so deep and so talented. Will he make the depth chart? It's not looking good for him. I am still excited to see him play in preseason, though. I want to see him in game action because sometimes that's the great equalizer when it comes. You might show up in training camp, you might show up in OTAs before that, but if you show up in preseason, I think that it has a little bit more merit to it than everything else does. Like if he's making plays in preseason, then he has a really, really good chance to make the depth chart. So I think we should wait till preseason to see what he does. And if he lets preseason up, that's a good thing. But I think we should pump the brakes. Obviously, he hasn't stood out so far, but he might in preseason. I think he still has the talent to really, really light it up. This question comes from Ronald. He says, Skaggs, why aren't you concerned about Jordan Phillips in OTAs? He said he wants to weigh 320. His usual weight is 336. And when asked about how much he weighs at the time, he said 335. Yeah, I remember that press conference. I think there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about Jordan Phillips. He's really hard on himself. He's very critical of himself. When you watch interviews with him, you can tell that he knows he hasn't been playing up to his potential. I mean, if you remember back when we drafted him coming out of Oklahoma, the man was an there was his athletic ability, everything was there to be a great defensive tackle on the next level, but guess what? The mental side of it wasn't there. Did he really love the game of football? Did he really want to push himself to be the best? None of that was there, and that really affected his game on the football field. I cannot understate enough. You can have all the talent in the world. We've seen that with Deion Jordan. We've seen that with Jordan Phillips so far in his career. Jordan Phillips, a whole lot. We've seen flashes from of greatness. Deion Jordan never ever really saw that. But you have to have that dog in you. You have to have that mental side. You have to want to be great at your job on the next level, to be a great football player, to be a great athlete. You just have to want it. Jordan Phillips, so far, I think this offseason, he's really said all the right things. He's been training with Sue in Portland, Oregon. He's really been trying to be better, but am I concerned about Jordan Phillips? That light's never going to come on. I mean, some of the things he's saying this offseason, he said last offseason. He's always been critical of himself, but does it really? He really improved last year in fairness of Jordan Phillips, but it still all wasn't there. We saw flashes of greatness of Jordan Phillips. He made big plays sometimes. He just has not been there for him. It really just hasn't been there. He'll have one great play on the next play. It's like he's picking daisies in the field. Like where did that Jordan Phillips that I just saw 2 seconds ago go? He needs to put it all together. He needs to put the preparation side of football, the mental side of football, the motor side of football, keep yourself going, and he needs to merge those two worlds with his talent, because his talent is off the charts. He has the talent. He just needs to combine the mental side and the talent side and merge those two things together, and he'll be a great defensive tackle, especially next to Ndamukong and Suh. The thing I'm concerned about is that light ever going to come on for him? Is he ever going to merge those two worlds? Is he ever going to be consistent? And if he does, how long is that going to take him to do? Because the rookies behind him, I'm not sure they're ready for that just yet. I think they're prospects. I think they're developmental players. I think Devon has the biggest upside. I think he has the biggest talent to hit the ground running right away. But those guys are going to take time. We still need Jordan Phillips to merge those two worlds, to hit that light, to be consistent for a 16-game season, and hopefully it happens. But those are the reasons I'm concerned about it. But he can totally do it. He can totally do it. We're just waiting to see if he can. This question comes from Quintand F72. He says, how many touches a game do you think Jakeem Grant will have? So Jakeem is going to have a whole lot more touches. I don't know. You know what? I really don't know how many touches it's going to be, but obviously the press conference with Clyde Christensen really gave Dolphins fans optimism about Jakeem Grant, saying how much he's improved through the offseason, saying all the right things. I mean, he went with Matt Darr. He worked out in Houston for a very, very long time. He's worked on his route running. Should I say his route technique. He said, Clyde said he has one of the best releases off the line of scrimmage out of anybody on the team, and that's saying a lot because Juice has got a pretty dang strong release. So I think there's a lot of reasons to be optimism. And then you go to the Adam Gase press conference and what he said about Jakeem, how he wants to get him more touches, whether that be just gadget plays, just get him more involved because of that big jump he's made so far this offseason. I can't wait to see him in pads and game action doing these kind of things that we've heard about him doing in OTAs. So those are all reasons to be optimistic about him. Do I think how many touches a game do I think he's going to get? That is a really hard question to answer. I think he's going to, from what he had, barely any. He got a few, I think maybe one or two in a game. I can't even remember all of them in actual offensive snaps that he had taken. But he's definitely going to get a lot more touches, end arounds, gadget plays of any kind you can even think of. I think you're going to see him in screens a lot, especially screens, similar to what the Patriots do with Julian Edelman. Because Julian Edelman has that special teams background, he's very hard to bring down in the open field. Same thing with Jakeem Grant. I think those are the similar things you're going to see him do in this upcoming 2017 season. Alright guys, so that is going to be it. That is the fan Q&A. I think this was one of the better ones I've done in a while. I think the questions were very very diverse this time around, and I really enjoyed doing this episode. I hope you guys also enjoyed watching this episode. Remember, if I did answer your question in this video, your question will be answered in the Miami Dolphins podcast. So that is going to be it, guys. I appreciate all of you. You keep the community going. This is the best Dolphins channel because of you guys, and I am Skagster1083, and I will see you guys in the next one.